Hello and welcome to Raising Anchor, your podcast and source for all things Rhode Island FC. I'm your host, Matt Entrican, coming to you on this Monday, September 8th. RIFC falls short in a rain-delayed game against Louisville City, losing 1-0. Was this game a bad performance, or was there more that meets the eye as they get ready for a must-win face-off against Sacramento Republic here in the Jägermeister Cup Semifinals in a midweek match at Centerville Bank Stadium? All eyes will be down on Tidewater to see if Rhode Island FC can get this through. And the only person I want talking about that and so much more right now is the one and only Mr. Jason Carey. Jason, how is it going, my friend?
Doing great, buddy. Looking forward to another episode of the Raising Anchor podcast. But can you believe this? John Morrissey has us ranked 18th. I mean,
the briberies are working. The briberies are working. I always enjoy it. It's kind of like it's my depression. It's my depresso espresso that I wake up to on my Monday mornings and see, like, where are we at? He's usually never wrong. I just surprised that we're somehow not in the 20s, despite the fact that I know these last.
Is that what
two
happens
results,
when you beat Charleston,
and then you slightly lose against a team like Louisville City? Listen, we didn't move anywhere in the standings from last week, but I'll take getting out of the 20s. In John's mind, I wouldn't mind maybe going a little bit higher up the table, and in the USL's mind, which are those standings in the Eastern Conference. Listen, we've got an action-packed show. We've got both the recap, plus the mailbag, plus a preview. So, this show is going to go 16 hours long now at this point anyways.
You love to see it.
But let's get right into it and just give a quick shout-out to Matthew Corcoran. He's, over the last week, he's down with the team in Spain for the United States men's national U20s. He did get a goal in that 4-1 victory against Morocco.
At least some of the men's national team can score, right?
Pochettino only has one victory in his entire tenure now with the U.S. men's national team. I think he's got 7 losses and 1 win.
Hey, we're going to get cooked.
But that's like
we're
classic.
Not going to make it out of the group stages.
I mean, for all the Tottenham fans on here, I'm surprised they didn't warn us. Like, this is exactly what you're going to get, because it's all going to come together. Maybe never, because that's just not how anyone that comes from that organization is actually capable of delivering on their promises.
We should have signed Big Ange, is what you're saying.
Well, that would have still been a second World Cup we would have needed to hold on to.
Well, it's just second year, I thought, right? So second World Cup. 1 year to toil, second year to figure it out.
Oh, I would have taken it. Also of worth, Jojea Kwizera gets minutes with the Rwanda side. It's a 1-0 loss against Nigeria. They're kind of getting into a deeper hole now. They needed that victory to be able to stay relevant against South Africa in their group. It's not impossible now for them to advance to a World Cup position. However, the hole is deeper. The door is getting a little bit closer to being closed, and we'll just have to kind of keep watching that. I'll be curious. I'm sure he's going to be down for the last round of World Cup qualifiers in that October window. So, just when we need him, when we need to get results, I'm sure we'll lose him again.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, makes total sense, right? The chat is looking good. Got a couple people in here. William Lamb, good evening to you as well. Andrew, listen, Tidewater, you can still say Tidewater. It's still Tidewater Landing. It's Centerville Bank Stadium, which you have to say. It's not a Freudian slip to say that you can still talk about the Tidewater Landing area. And that's what I was going for, clearly, because there was some rain around Tidewater Landing this week. Going into this recap here against this match against Louisville City, Jason, this match is such a hard one to talk about, because on one hand, you've got the weather delay, which frustrated fans right out the gate. It was a sold-out match. Clearly, people abandoned that idea, because I don't blame them, especially if it's maybe their first time, or it was kids' night, so maybe they're bringing the family out. Kids don't do well in that kind of weather. So you kind of already start things on a weird foot. And then, you get into the performance itself, and like, part of me recognizes that this was a good match. But then part of me also understands what the eyeball test says, is that the results weren't there and we didn't get a win. So can we call this a good match? Do we know what, like, it's just really hard to walk away from this game feeling like I am comfortable with what I saw.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. Like, it's, we knew that Louisville City is going to be difficult, right? They are the best team in the league. They've only lost one time this year. So they score goals for fun. And they're also a very good defensive team this year too. So, we saw a lot of that on both sides. I think the problem is you look at the 1-0, win, and I mean, look at that goal. That he did not intend to score that.
That can't be a goal, right? That was a cross or a pass into the box and it had, maybe because of the rain, it had a little bit of slippage under his kick, and it just kept floating. Koke had it marked, but then like even was like, oh no, this is like
that was like 8 years ago. Cities played Tottenham. Jesus Navas sent in a cross like 20 seconds into the game. Same exact thing happened. It just kind of floated over the back of the corner over Lloris, and it's just like, Jesus Navas, no offense, it's not that good. Like, he did not intend to do that. Like
99 out of 100 times, McFadden's not putting that goal in the back of the net, right?
Yeah, and at that point, you have a 0-0 game. I mean, maybe we'll think about that here in a moment, but that might be a little different thoughts. But other than that, they didn't really have a lot to show for the best offense in the league. They actually only had 4 shots, which is wild, and only one of them on target. They only took 1 shot in the second half after going up, 1-0 in the first half.
We only maybe have taken 1 shot in the second half ourselves.
Maybe. Well, it was 4 each half.
I know, shots, but there was a 30-minute block where there was no shots going on Rhode Island FC's side.
It was a bit rough to watch in a sense of, there was a lot of possession, but maybe not a lot came from it. I guess it's one of those things I kind of expected to maybe lose. And I almost like would have felt better if we just lost 3-0. Just like, oh yeah, they're much better than us. Instead, it's like, we probably should have had a 0-0 draw there.
I mean, the game had 0-0 written over it. When you look at the stats, when you look at kind of the combinations of sequences, it didn't feel like Lou was ever in this match. To your point, you could argue, oh, that's partly because they didn't bring their best players, some not available for international duty, some we still don't
also
know.
Proved that they're a very deep team though too.
Yeah, but even in that depth, right? Like the season, like you said, 4 shots, that was Lou's lowest amount of shots for their entire season. So like defensively, you can argue Rhode Island FC put in the work on the night, and maybe sprinkled over the top was a little bit of lack of that Lou City magic we've seen all season. I guess like the argument you could say is, the pro to that is that so many other teams have dropped points in a significant manner, a more complete beating, and Rhode Island FC much more weathering that storm, showing that, okay, last week in Charleston or against Charleston, we're able to get the victory. Now against the number 1 team, we're able to mostly hold on except for a fluke goal. That's pretty promising. And that's that, like, you want to have that feel good moment, despite the fact that the result is that we didn't score a goal. And before people come at me in the chat about like, yep, we're just back to our old, bad ways when it comes to the offensive front, I will say that like you can't discount that RFC wasn't trying in this game. Like, despite the lack of the ball not going in the back of the net, to your point, we did outshoot Lou 8-4. So, that's not a terrible thing. Again, we're trying to make something happen. But like the other thing to it is like, where's the formula for Rhode Island FC? We talked at length on last week's episode that in some ways we were all ready to see this game be a loss, but it needed to be like a 2-1. We needed to demonstrate to ourselves, to the teams that we're going to have to go through in the any kind of conference postseason, that we have the ability to deconstruct or disassemble some defenses here and find ways to score. We didn't do that. Like, we'll talk a little bit about the momentum here in a second, but like, now talking about the offensive side of Rhode Island FC, does this still make it a good match? It's great to say we held on and Lou didn't really deserve it. They still got away with the win. They smashed and grabbed all 3 points. But from that offensive side, are we past the point of saying we looked really good up until the fact that we didn't score a goal? Or at this point, it's like, it doesn't matter how these goals go in, even if they're weird McFadden shots, like we need to start finding the back of the net, and there's no more excuses.
I think we need to find the back of the net. The reality is, like, you can have a team that is very strong defensively and like enjoy and cherish that team, right? Look at Pittsburgh. Bob Lilly and them have been doing it for years. And sure, maybe they're a little up and down, but they'll go out there and they'll get, 1-0 wins and revel in how strong and tough they are to break down. On the other hand, this team just doesn't score goals. And while we are strong defensively, we're not the best defense. We're just in like the top 4. So there are other teams that are still better than we are defensively. At this point, like, we've talked about this and kind of like what Chuck is saying here too. Like, I'd rather at this point just be entertained to a certain extent. It's this like struggle of, are we going full Jose Chelsea 04 where we're going to let in like 5 goals? but we'll score like 15. No, like we're floundering, and it's tough to watch sometimes.
I'm tired for golf clapping losses. Like, oh, it was a really strong defensive loss that we just had. Like, that doesn't feel fun to say out loud. I also respect the work that this team is putting in. I understand. It's like watching a perfect game in baseball. I understand the technical aptitude that you have to be able to weather these kinds of, teams that are so great offensively. But man, is it a lot more fun when you can talk about, hey, yeah, okay, we lost 3-2, but did you see those goals from, blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. That's where I want to be at this point, to be talking about losses. I don't want to be talking about losses and then still asking, have we figured out how to score? We have 7 games left now. We have 3 left at Centerville Bank Stadium for the remainder of the season. We cannot still be talking about how do we find the back of the net with this team. If we are, then like I'm getting closer and closer to saying, hey, like the optimism that we can win the rest of our matches the light is starting to die. And I don't want to talk that way about this team, but it's starting to get a little bit.
Starting to fade a bit there.
A little bit. I like that Jason's also commenting that the ground is cursed. I'm not against that at this point, Jason. I'm wondering if there is a curse that needs to be lifted from Centerville Bank Stadium. We do a Ted Lasso thing where we get the burn pit in the center circle, and all of Defiance brings their favorite soccer item or memory, and we just toss it in the fire and
maybe we need to consult some local mages or something, see if we need to do some readings on the stadium, if they need a seance or something, so we can kind of get this curse lifted.
Yeah, brown sites must also mean curse sites. I don't know. But listen, talking about this, I want to just bring up one last thing before we get to coach's comments on the game. We talk about how we're not seeing goals. I think that, like, also when we think about breaking this down and analyzing the tactics, the strategy, the deployment, I think if we just scored goals, we would ease up on a lot of that, because sometimes like that's the natural fluidity of a match. But Jason, we've now failed to score in 13 of our 23 matches in the regular season this year.
It's rough.
And the only like offset to that is the positivity of the Open Cup and the Jägermeister. But you take those away, you strip them out. We haven't scored in 13. I didn't pull the stat on how many of those were home games versus away, but I feel like a majority of them were probably in front of fans, because that's just what we've deserved all season. That's still a season league leading. I can't talk tonight. It's so confusing. A league leading low. I got to stop putting that many alliterations in one spot. We can't score. We can't buy a goal. And also, too, when we don't score the opening goal, we know that the game's basically over. We haven't won a match in the last 13 instances where we've conceded the opening goal, all the way back to almost a year to the day against FC Tulsa last season. That's bad. That's really, really bad. We cannot have that happen.
Yeah, dark times here. I was going to say, like, at 13, we have 30 games in the season. I wouldn't be, unless something turns around pretty quickly, I wouldn't be surprised if we get to 15. Half of the games this year we didn't score a goal.
You're putting that voodoo on us, but let's hear what Coach Cano had to say. Bit of an interesting kind of opinion that came out of him in this press release or press conference. I keep getting those words wrong. It's been a long week already, and it's only Monday. But interesting thoughts coming out of him on his opinion of this performance against the best team in the Eastern Conference.
Overall, the performance wasn't too bad. I don't think there was much difference between the two teams. Their goal was fortunate, whether he's shooting or not, but very good goal. But I don't remember Koke having to make a save other than that. And we probably had a really good chance, top of the box early in the first half after that. But yeah, once they went ahead, they're always going to be difficult to break down.
Coach, on the delay and all that stuff that happened before the game, did that change anything? Did that kind of impact anything about the game? I don't know if you've ever been in a situation like that before.
Yeah, I've been in scenarios like that before. You just gotta be ready for everything. But I actually think it was handled all right by everybody that was making those decisions, because the last thing you want is to have to start a game and then pick it back up like midway. So I think it was the right call to just delay it.
Coach, what was the biggest thing on your mind going into this game today? Louisville City's at the top of the standings. Like you said, it was pretty much an even game with the exception of a really rare kind of technical. Those don't normally go in. What was the kind of setup that you were thinking about on how to contain Danny Cruz's side on the night?
I don't even know if it was so much how to contain them. I think I don't think they were that dangerous. We just try to obviously nullify what they do, but also impose ourselves in the game. So thought we did that. A couple of real transition moments. I thought we were dangerous, but in open play, they're so good defensively once they got behind the ball, and once they went ahead, it was really, really difficult to break them down.
And like you said, really even match. Didn't get the result, but how do you get the guys to flip the switch, almost immediately? Like, how do you relay that message? You played well, now you have to flip the switch.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that, I mean, they know how big the game is on Wednesday, so chance to make another two finals in 2 years, so they know how big it is, but they got to recover first. Short-term memory, wasn't a bad performance. I don't think they should hang their head. Louisville's best team in the league for a reason, so yeah, but small margins in the game.
In terms of this team, you were knocking on the door a couple times tonight, looked dangerous at periods. You've talked at length about, it seems like the final piece is just the goals, right? Like everything else is there, entries into the box, chance creation. What did you see from the players tonight? Well, if you were to go back right now and just break down an individual performance or the team performance, what's that piece that's not getting to the goals?
Probably need to shoot more. We have that much of the ball, and sometimes when opponents in a low block like that, you have to shoot more from outside of the box to draw them out. But I felt it was opportunities in the first half, especially when we could play forward and we're just playing backwards, and then they smell blood in the water, and we're just starting to press us, So, yeah, we want to keep the ball, but we say to them all the time, if the back line is high, play the ball in behind. Like, don't play backwards. Koke is not going to score for us. So the less he touches the ball at times, the better. Like, going back to him, it's not what we're trying to do.
And then obviously you have to set up differently for each team. But last week you guys had such a low amount of possession. Is it still the objective of this team, though, tactically, that you want a majority of the ball, or is this team, in your opinion, now as you've seen kind of samples on both sides against really tough opponents, do they kind of show you that they can do a lot more off the ball with less possession, or is your game that you still want more of that ball?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'll ever be a coach and coach my team and say you want the opposition to have the ball. I just don't see the game like that. But at times, I mean, I think Charleston's the best team in possession in the league, but it was also the context of the game. Like, we went ahead, and then naturally it just. But that's what happens in the league. I would be surprised to see what the stats are, the teams that go ahead, and what the possession looks like before they go ahead, and then how the game ends, because everybody is just so difficult to break down. So, yeah, we're probably better when we have less of the ball. Not as much. But, yeah, I mean, I think tonight we had like close to 60%, but I think a little bit more even is probably better, because that means we have more time to win the ball back off the opposition and be dangerous in transition, which we scored a lot of goals from that last year.
How much credit does Louisville get for kind of killing the game off in the second half? How much blame do you kind of take for not going at them a little more? Because it seemed like the first half you had a lot more chances. Second half, maybe not as much.
Yeah, I mean, they're top of the league for a reason. They're smart, they're intelligent, they're well coached. So yeah, it's part of the game when a team goes ahead to just know how to keep the clock moving along and stall and buy a little bit of time. But yeah, everybody does it. But I think that's on the officials to help speed the game up.
Last two games, obviously you can get the result tonight, but does it build a little confidence as we head towards the end of the season here, knowing they did really well?
Yeah, I think we're definitely building and gathering momentum. There's going to be little setbacks, but yeah, they're pretty confident right now. I mean, that's the best team in the league. We played the best two teams in the league back to back, and as you can see, it's small margins, but that's a fortunate wonder goal, whether he meant to shoot or not. But it's a wonder goal. Like, how many times did it happen? But Koke didn't have much else to do.
Thoughts on Nando getting that initial start now here in RIFC? Obviously, he's a long-term prospect for you. How do you see him shaping into the remainder of the season and kind of the larger picture overhead?
Yeah, just the more minutes he can get, the better he's going to get. He's so young. He's 18. I probably wasn't going to put him in the 18 this weekend, but Albert had a slight abdominal issue, abdominal strain, so we needed another attacker. But yeah, the more minutes he gets, the better he's going to get. But we also got to protect him too. But I think that was a perfect scenario to kind of put him in with chasing the game, and he can run. He had a couple of moments where he's, decision making and things of that nature that could be better, but he's 18 years old, so he's only going to get better the more minutes he gets. So when we can get him minutes, he'll keep improving.
What do you make of Wednesday night? You've already seen them once here this year, and I mean they were a tough team. So what do you make of that coming in here Wednesday night?
Yeah, they're a good team, well coached. Yeah, it's going to be difficult. Be a difficult game, but I'm sure it's going to be small margins again. They're in Tampa, so their trip here is not going to be as bad as it would be coming from Sacramento. But I think we're better than when we played them. We're healthier for sure. But yeah, they're going to be a tough team. But I also feel, they again scored a wonder over free kick to go ahead 1-0. The second goal, poor defending from us for sure. But everything's so close and so tight, so I don't anticipate Wednesday being any different.
Does the approach change if it's a one-off, or does that not change anything about the way you go into that game?
No, we're just trying to win. So whoever's healthy, whoever's in form, we'll have to make a couple of changes. But yeah, just trying to win the game. It's a one-off game, so try and win the game.
Connor, any frustration in the fact that this game, obviously it was hard to predict so far into the future, but now it's falling on the middle of an international break where you don't have Quizera or Corcoran available? You mentioned last year during the Eastern Conference Finals how Quizera was out for his international duty. Is that something the league has to do differently and think about to make sure you have every player that you have possibly available for selection?
I think it's a good problem for the league to have, is that now you're missing quality players for these type of matches. But yeah, right now it's probably not enough players that are missing minutes to make the change. But at some point the league's going to have to, because you can't keep missing your better players. But that's why we also went and got Aldir and improved that position, somebody that can step in and play while he was gone. So I thought Aldir had some really good moments. So he's, it's not much between him and Jojea right now. They're different skill sets. But yeah, we're perfectly happy with Aldi being there.
Thanks, Coach.
Cool. Thanks.
Perfectly happy with Aldi. Justice for Aldair Sanchez. Still want a campaign for him being player of the year. I'm sure I've seen the comments on the Discord, Jason. I think I know who's probably most likely going to win that.
He did have a pretty good performance against Louisville.
I just like that he's interchangeable at this point with Jojea. I don't know if that means Jojea has dropped off so significantly or Aldair has risen to the occasion. But I want to unpack two important things there. One, first time we've ever heard Kano say they're moving the ball backwards too much. They need to be able to be aggressive, look forward, and then also shoot the ball. I'm very surprised that he says this in the post game, because we feel this. We feel these two critical pieces that we don't see the team doing. What are those instructions then? Because it seems like sometimes the team is afraid to take that shot, or they take too long in making the decision to put something through traffic and see what happens. What are your thoughts on Kano saying that out loud finally?
I agree with him. I think it is a numbers game. Sure. Could it turn out to be like St. Louis City, where they had 43 shots against Dallas's third string keeper, whatever what happened this past weekend, and they still don't score? Sure. But at the same time, I would feel a little more comfortable if we maybe got to 15 shots with 60% possession. Like you said, just at some point, just have a crack at it. Force the keeper to make a save. See if a spill can happen. Have someone run into the box to see if they can cause some chaos. They're just a little too cautious.
Second big one of the night. He said it also. This team may or may not do better without the ball. He said it, and I smiled in the interview, and that's when he backpedaled. No, not less of it, just maybe not having as much, which is the same thing to me. Kano just admitted in this that we might actually do better in transition without the ball, but then also in the same statement said that's not his vision of football for this team, that he wants to have the ball and he wants to be able to dictate those terms. Now, granted, he also said something very important that said he would be surprised, and I don't even know how to pull this stat, on how many teams impose a possession-based tactic until they're up that first goal and then change things around. But he also confirmed everything we've been saying, that he's seen it in the results from last year and some samples here where we can be really dangerous without having the ball. And then 5 seconds later says, but I want the ball. Make sense to me. And I'm not throwing any shade at Coach Connor Smith, but like,
yeah,
it's like,
his prerogative.
why won't he do this thing that we all want him to do?
I don't know, but I mean, yeah, if that's the way he sees the game, respect. Like I've watched plenty of possession football. It can be incredibly like exciting and entertaining when it works. The problem is it just does not feel like it's working for us, right? We feel like it's too much pointless possession, too much passing in the back. Like if you're gonna possess the ball, move it forward, cut some lines, try and make some passes and take a shot, and then try and get the ball back and do it again. Cool, perfect. I'd love to see it. But it's just too much. Just circle it around 3 or 4 more times before you take a shot. Like it's like the joke about you can't take the shot unless you have a minimum of like 60 passes you got to string together.
No, yeah, I completely agree. So let's talk about how Kano did construct this team going into this game against Lou.
Yeah, and so 2 player changes here, but obviously some of those kind of had to be made based upon some things like we talked about in regards to availability. But Koke Vegas in net, back 3 of Ugo Bakarek, Karifa Yao, and Ame Mavika. That midfield 4 there, Clay Holstead, Zach Harivo, Marky Barr, and Aldair Sanchez, with a kind of floating front 3 there of Maxi Rodriguez, JJ Williams, and Amish Shapiro Thompson.
I mean, listen, besides the 2 we needed to cover for the international break, it makes sense that you carry over the team that got you the win last weekend against Charleston. I think there's no surprises there. Maybe you could have questioned Amos and Busy with a swap there if you needed something more on the front line, but clearly Amos offered something in that midfield overload that Kano had mentioned last week. Is this kind of the team, whether it's due to the injuries, it's due to the lack of availability, it's due to the lack of performance from some of our quote-unquote key players, is this kind of what I would see as the foreseeable future minus the Corcoran Quizera swap? I mean, like, this seems kind of like it might be the ride or die at this point in the season.
Yeah, at this point, this is pretty much the team. I think it probably won't happen, but if somehow Busy were to like really turn it on, you would think maybe he could maybe steal AST spot, but at the same time, like AST just works too hard. And we'd have to see like he would have to be like scoring a goal a game for coach to be like, well, now I need to put this guy in here. So how do I make that work?
Of note from the lineup, goalkeeper Koke Vegas gets his 100th career appearance in the USL Championship on the night. And then, of course, the 18-year-old Machu Ndongo gets his RIFC debut coming on in the 81st minute. Let's get straight into the overall performance here and talk about what we saw, what we liked, what we didn't quite like. I want to kind of open things up here. I want to get back to this anti-possession thing for a second. Like Kano said a minute ago, almost 60% of the possession at 57.4. It only yielded a 0.44 XG. We did have 8 shots, but only one of them on target. Again, I just feel like watching this game, and I went to multiple different angles trying to stay dry, then getting behind the Defiance and watching some of the game. I watched this team and like it just feels that we're still playing too slow. And ironically, Kano all season has wanted to water that pitch down to get the ball moving as fast as possible. And even when we have the ball at maximum velocity, it's
literally raining. It
still feels like it's just too slow. Too many touches, too many looks before there's a confident shot or a pass. It allows defenders to close down lanes, block crosses in. Is this the best that Rhode Island FC can have at this point? Like, again, defensively, I'm not even going to touch the subject tonight because defensively the team was great. I'm talking more the midfield production now and offense. Like, it just feels like we can't unlock the next gear.
What I think is happening is I think that this team is struggling to find a balance.
Oh, wait. You mean this balance? How we have 50.5% attacking only down the left channel and 26.8% attacking down the right channel?
I mean, that's part of that.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Continue.
But I partly I think it's coming down to Connor clearly likes possession, right? I mean, he admitted that that's how he wants his team to play. So I think there are instructions that he's giving about the team to retain the ball. And the players, every time they have the ball, are caught in between two minds. Like, oh, do I pass it forward to someone making a run and potentially lose the ball? Or do I take the safer route and pass it back to my left center back
But
and
if
recycle
Kano's
possession?
saying
And
they're going
like,
backwards, like why are they going backwards? Like he should be
because he
encouraging
wants
them
them
to be
to
braver.
possess the ball.
So it's a conflict of what he wants and what he's telling them to do.
I think it's that balance. You need to be, and it's a very difficult balance to maintain. And I think part of the problem is because we just don't really have like we don't have like a midfield maestro to like dictate the play. Like,
I honestly thought you were about to say we just don't have good players. It looked
no,
like it was
no,
on
no,
the tip
no,
of your
no.
lips.
We have a lot of we have a lot of like really hardworking good players. But at any of the, do you look at any of those players and think that any of them are like a Panio too? Right? Someone whose main skill is like passing to create an assist, and like, sure, maybe that's not actually what he turned out to be because he's kind of even floundering at Hartford, but that's what we thought he was going to be, right? We don't have a midfield maestro. We thought Maxey was going to be that, but if anything, he's just a like incredibly industrious like center midfielder who has the ability to score and is a decent passer, but he's not creating those opportunities. So if anything, the players are just, because last year, all of our production was on the wings. Jojea is not really clicking this year in terms of his production. And, we, of course, because we bring it up every week, we don't have Steven Turnbull anymore. So what we had last year was a incredibly destructive, competent midfield who would win the ball back and press and fight, but they also weren't creating a tons of chances. We were just kind of like battle of attrition, and we're fighting through counters, and now we change it to this like possession style, but we don't have a bunch of creative midfielders.
I mean, let's talk about one of them right now and talk about the drop off of Noah Fuson, because producer Tor had mentioned in the post game as we were assembling notes that a case study needs to be completed on the Fuson fall off this season. I was watching through the stuff. I mean, I watched him on the field. I didn't realize how kind of completely missing he was in the time that he got on this match. Only 8 passes in the entirety. He had almost 30 minutes of time on the pitch. 8 passes, 1 final third entry. It's like he's not even there anymore. Like something has completely just imposed or limited his ability to make an impact. Maybe it's himself, maybe it's the style of play. I don't quite know, but watching where Fuson was last year, almost a 10 for 10 player, 10 goals, 10 assists, and now just crickets.
Yeah.
I don't understand
him and Quazera, 2 of our most creative players last year, are not creating. And who else in this team is going to do it?
I mean, maybe Matthew Ndongo, which, by the way, I want to ask you, what did you think of him overall?
I mean, it's hard to make a, sweeping decision based upon 9 minutes.
Sweep away.
I am cautiously excited to see what he will become, but I think that we're not going to see a ton of him this year. If anything, he's just going to get some garbage minutes, and hopefully that gives him some opportunity to get some experience. But the reality is what he's really going to get is from training. I think that's where he's really going to learn how to really go to that next level.
Dribble Trips writes, and I miss Billboard Fuson. I do too, man. I do too. Maybe it's the billboard that cursed him. Maybe as soon as they put that bike photo on it of him up on the billboards around Rhode Island, things just went south. Jason writes, and I think the addition of Maxey hurt him. We could see. I will say back to Ndongo, by the way, we tried to get him to come into the post game, and I was like, maybe at 18 years old, he hasn't had media training yet. They're not comfortable putting a kid in front of the press and the cameras. And then they said, nope, you're not going to have him. And we're like, why not? He's like, well, it's because he doesn't speak any English. So I'm going to have to learn French by the time he becomes a prolific starter, or he's going to have to learn English. One of these Matthews is going to have to figure it out. So we'll go from there.
I mean, I'm learning a different language, but I'm on 200 Duolingo streak. Come on.
I have 0 days in Duolingo. I'm working on running. That's all I got right now, my guy. All right. Want to ask this question. It's gotta be put out there in the world. We just cannot string together 2 wins this season. Do you know how many times we've done it?
There's the one time Birmingham and Tampa, right?
That's the only one. That's the only time
Can
we've
we just
strung
play them
together
every week?
back-to-back wins across the championship. We have had some Open Cup into regular season. We haven't had it with the Jägermeister. It has never gone that way, but we always follow every win with a draw or a loss, with the exception of those 2 games. Why can't this team put together back-to-back performances? I'll put Louisville City as an asterisk just because we know how difficult they were going to be, but it continues to be this, like, we get something going and we can't build on it. And I feel like that's really starting to hurt our ability to put points, collect points, if you will, as we get into the business end of the season.
I think it's one of those self-fulfilling prophecies of confidence where they know that they've struggled this year and they'll have a good performance and they'll be like, yeah, we did it. And they'll go to the next one and be like, hey, we haven't had consecutive good performances. And like, even against like those, like Tampa, we scored 3 goals from like 45 yards. And then Birmingham, we scored 1 and then they got a red card and we kind of like, I don't want to say we held on for dear life, but we really didn't do much more to like really show that, yes, we deserve to win this game. We just kind of like got through it.
Agreed. Talking about, by the way, interviews going back from Ndongo, there was one person that demanded to be interviewed on the night, and that was JJ Williams. He was heated. He was saying things that I will not repeat here on this podcast. 1, because it wasn't necessarily on the record. I just heard it from afar in the player tunnel. And 2, if I said them, we would get fined by whatever, airwave regulator is, a regulatory agency is out there. Ooh, I like that. But he was hot. I mean, he was demanding to go into the interview room, and Rhode Island FC said, that's not going to be a good idea to have you in there. His beef, though, I can share. He wasn't happy with the refereeing on this night. I looked over the performance, from the ref's standpoint. 16 fouls to lose 9, not a single yellow card for Lou. A lot of fans after the game talking about how Lou would just kind of dive and flop upon contact. I talked to some people about it after the game, where RIFC is known for being a physical team, and sometimes they're also a hot-headed team. And if you can use that to your advantage, especially if you go up a goal early and that, the 18th minute, like they had with this McFadden goal, it's really easy to kind of play the refs within the championship caliber of refereeing.
Probably get under our team skin at that point.
But I don't think it's just the team. I think it's also the reffing. I think that there's a lot, like, if you watch a Premier game, you're going to see a lot more. You're going to see the same level of physicality, if not more, but a lot less fouls called. The right cards get, those come out when it's necessary, but they don't stop the game for contact. In this league, it almost seems like there's this.
It's supposed to be a contact sport, but they're like, not so much.
So interesting. I was talking to Andrew about this, and he had the best quote ever. Football is a contact sport. It's just not a collision sport, right? That's the other football. And I think too often the refs in this business, they treat it like every piece of contact is collision. And there are times when that will happen, and you have to play it safe for the player's health. But I think also, unfortunately, sometimes like we just have really soft refs that slow down the game, and then we never get that same amount of injury time or stoppage time back at the end.
I should remember her name because she's like
Natalie Simon.
Okay,
best.
Put some respect on her name because she lets the boys play, and it felt like whenever that happens, whatever happened to that game, you're not gonna judge it too harshly. I think the reality though too is, I think we need to kind of calm down on those refs and just speak with their actions.
Yeah,
we can't score goals like.
Well, Tim writes in too. Like, I also think the way Kano just berates the fourth official at times. We've seen him now get so heated that he's been sent off and done the Batman on the top of the stadium. Like, I also wonder sometimes if because we've heard from first accounts that when refs start to get booed in stadiums, it puts a level of pressure on them that they didn't have. Sometimes in the favor of the home field, but sometimes also it's like, well, everyone hates me now. I'll give you a real reason to like really not like me anymore. So
into it.
I agree. But listen, anything else before we talk about the impact of the table? Anything else that called out about this? We agree that this was a good game, but it was a bad result.
I would say more like good performance, but bad result, right? In a sense of like the game itself wasn't super entertaining, but like we went toe to toe with the best team in the league and lost because of fluke goal. Doesn't feel great, But like, if you try and be objective from it, and hopefully the players will too look at this and can take that performance level into the next match.
Agreed. In the standings now with this result, unfortunately, Rhode Island continues to remain outside of the playoffs, and now it's getting wider. It's getting wider there for this team now sitting in 9th place. There's only 7 games left here in the regular season. Of course, now all eyes on this this semifinal here in the Jägermeister Cup. But, Jason, I still see us being able to maybe go after 7th and 8th, but now looking where Hartford is compared to us, I just don't understand how they are now 8 points ahead of us. When the last time we met up, we were still ahead of that. It's mind-boggling how this can work.
It's crazy what happens when you win a bunch
of games.
Know.
I wouldn't know at all. All right, let's get into this Monday mailbag portion of the show so that we can talk more about the playoff or the Jägermeister preview here in a second. Let's start things off with my question to you, my friend. Ben Silva writes in, how many games have we not been able to score in this year?
I think we brought the stat up earlier. It's 13 games. It's
the correct answer is it's all of them, because it feels like we just cannot put goals in there.
It does feel like all of them. I think the big problem is last year we didn't have as many. I think it was like 6 or 7. The difference last year is we didn't lose, though.
Yeah, those were all nil-nil draws.
If we had 13 nil-nil draws, that would not feel great, but we would probably also be in like 7th or 8th place. And I'd be like, hey, Draw Kings are back. Just going to get a tattoo at this point.
That's the most entertaining soccer we could ever watch.
Next one here from Lisa. Did the team really shut down the lots during the storm? Is that policy? And if so, who is responsible?
Lisa, I appreciate you asking me the hard-hitting questions that I am supposed to know and don't know.
What's the LAZ? Right?
Well, no, yeah. So first and foremost, obviously referring back, Rhode Island FC makes the decision because they were basically going through monsoon weather alerts with thunderstorms, lightning in the area. I mean, we could see it lighting up the horizon. So they make the decision to delay the gates opening to the stadium by an hour so that they can make the appropriate amount of necessary conditions to make sure that the players and the fans are safe inside the stadium. The problem is that by the time that they released the announcement, some people were already in transition to go to the game, so they were like outside of the stadium. Some people, like when you think about, it's easy to say, oh, if you're in the parking lot, get to your car and just weather it out from your vehicle. But as this is a downtown and urban environment, people are walking to the game. People are taking public transportation to the game, and they weren't allowing people in to use the facilities to shelter in place. Obviously, it's the first time that the stadium's ever had to go through one of these kinds of experiences. So as I'm going to use a tongue-in-cheek of, it was a dry run for a wet time.
Got him.
But they do need to improve the conditions of that and be considerate to people that can't go and shelter in a car. They're going to have to figure that out. So as far as who's in charge of that, I'm just going to say the front office. If you really want the names, you can DM me on anything, and I'll give you a person you can reach out to about it. But I think outside of the unfortunateness of the prep that's involved for something like that, I think they did as much as they possibly could. And then maybe in the future, like just because you delaying the game also cost them the 2DN broadcast. They couldn't even have the match played on one of the bigger broadcasting partners they had for the season. So obviously player and fan safety is the most important thing here, but they're going to have to figure that out and have a little bit more of a balancing act in the future. I will argue, by the way, though, more dangerous than not being able to get into the stadium is the bathrooms when they're that wet. I almost died 3 times slipping and sliding trying to use the restrooms. They need to like grate that ground in there so that it's the same as like the promenade, or put mats down. I don't know what, but every time I go into one of the public restrooms at the stadium, I'm risking my life just to use the restroom. It's a scary place, Jason. It's a scary place.
Yeah, actually, now that you say that, it can get a bit slippery in there. Yes, maybe some better drainage or some like you said, make that ground a little rough.
We need the same pitch drainage as we have in the restrooms, and we'll be fine. Taras writes in, was last night a good performance?
It was a very good defensive performance, and I guess to a certain extent, you could argue like this team isn't that great offensively, but Louisville's also the best defense in the league. So like it's difficult to be too hard on a team who beat, the second best team in the league and then like made a Louisville side, the best team in the league, really, struggle to a certain extent, even if you want to claim that they were a bit like deflated in regards to their availability.
I think if you look at the big takeaway from the last two games is that they've held both of those teams to their lowest shots and shots on target all season. So like, again, showing the caliber of the defensive side of Rhode Island FC, that is where we have to kind of deconstruct and say this is the silver lining to this, is that should we make it into the playoffs, like we're going to be a very difficult team to break down and beat. However, teams are still finding weird ways to find goals. So we have to be able to find those same weird ways to find our own goals.
Yeah. And Otto Brizio Romano. Oh, love it. What's the inside info on Ndonga?
So I'm assuming you're just kind of asking what's going on with him. You kind of heard Coach Kano there in the press conference talk about what he envisions for him. I think surprisingly, he didn't really have him even thought of as a roster addition for the season. It's really going to come down to injuries or managing players' minutes if there's any kind of risk of an injury. He, when you watched how he was positioned, he definitely sat kind of lateral to JJ, a little bit of a target forward action, a little bit of hold up. I didn't see any. I haven't seen anything in the practice or in the game so far that like shows me what is the X factor that he's going to be bringing. I don't think it's his hold up play. I don't think it's his speed. I don't think he was given the chance to run at full speed against this Lou side that was pretty compact. But right now it's just an investment for them. They see it as a long-term project, and this will probably be the first player that they are able, with intent, to sell on. If they sell any other players on between now and Ndonga, it'll probably be some other club coming and knocking. But I think this will be that first player that, in lieu of an RIFC academy, this is that first player they're going to be able to move on with some sort of serious intent. But only time will tell. You're taking a gamble with a player like this, and with so little information out there available about his time elsewhere, the Cameroonian kind of remains an unknown at this moment in time. So I would just say, if we see him, expect him to be slightly better than Kevin Ordui and a little bit less impactful than Joe Brito. I think that would be like right in the like a Kevin Vang type of alternate choice there. Rachel asks in, why can't we score goals? It's like we're the unluckiest team ever. Do you agree with that, Jason?
To a certain extent, I think we kind of talked a little bit about this. I think it's unfortunate. The problem is maybe a little more complex. I think that we, like Coach said earlier in the interview, we sometimes do not take enough shots. We are a little too conservative in the way that we play. Some of the players last year who were our creative forces are not the same players that they are this year. It's difficult to pin it down to one thing. Does luck play a factor? Absolutely. Right. Playing soccer is like playing chess, but every move is a dice roll, and we're rolling nat ones every time. Next one here from John Q. Which players have multi-year contracts and are returning next year? And which players do you think will be gone?
So we've tried to talk about this at length. I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to add it in tonight's show, but I'm just going to go with it because I'm sick of every week thinking we're going to talk about this and then not using this.
Yeah, I do think we've been asked this for quite some time in a row.
So here's a look to the future that we know and we can confirm for 2026. The players that we know will be coming back, unless the club decides to exercise some sort of release or sell on or anything other than it. But these are players guaranteed to come back under contract. You do have Albert Dikwa, Noah Fuson, Clay Holstead, Frank Nadarce, Grant Stoneman, Karifa Yao, Maxi Rodriguez, Dwayne Atkinson, and Zach Harivo. Harivo's the one that I don't know because he technically signed a multi-year deal into the middle of last season when he came over. But because he's such a Coach Kano favorite in terms of just like it goes beyond the relationship on the pitch, I can't imagine he wouldn't be back. So like that's the one I would put a asterisk under, but I really do believe that he's on, or he's guaranteed to come back in. Of these players that you see here, only Chico still remains on any kind of contract from his initial signing. The majority of these players either new to the roster this season or they all earned additional multi-year deals after their performances in 2024. You look at, Noah Fuson, I don't know if that's paid off. Clay Holstead, we all love him, but it's not paying off as a right wing back. Frank Nodarse, he's had a drop off. Grant Stoneman, injured. Krifa Yau's basically been the only steady Eddie in here that has shown and demonstrated a reason to continue to playing for this team in a consistent manner. Likely to return, you do have Koke Vegas. We know that he's at the end of his first multi-year deal with a club option. Most of these players either are on club options at this point, or we just don't know enough about how their deals were constructed. Aldair Sanchez, I don't know if he would have come as a multi-deal considering Sacramento had released him. I feel like we picked him up as a bargain. Ugo Bacharak, again, one of those ones, he was injured for lengths of time with his time at Minnesota United, could have come on a one-year deal to see if he would be of kind of any impact. I imagine he is returning. I think he's been very great. Same with Ame Mabika. I don't see why he would not return to this team in 2026. Jorge Quizera, he's coming to his club option. It'll be interesting to understand, like, hey, what does that look like for your opportunity on getting those additional kind of carryovers? That, or I don't know. Actually, Jorge may be one that already has like a deal in place before, because again, pivotal in that 2024 year. JJ Williams, this is the big one. JJ Williams is going to be coming up into his club option year. When you think about that, like Jason, we've said this at length, he has scored a ton of goals, but it's not consistent. He also hasn't stayed healthy from a consistent standpoint. Everybody loves JJ Williams. Do you bring JJ Williams back, or do you try to find a more consistent goal production player?
Ooh, that's tough. Because I would say the main concern with him is his health. I think that part of the goal scoring, honestly, is part of the other issues we've talked about tonight with the creativity. I think if he was getting a little bit better service, I think he'd probably have a few more goals. So I would think that the main concern there would be like, can we get a full year of JJ? And if so, what could that goal return look like? Is that a 15 to 20 return? I don't know. It's going to be, a lot of it's going to come down to how does the rest of this year pan out, right? If we crash out of the Jägermeister Cup, and if we don't even make it into the playoffs, that is a reckoning that I don't even want to kind of think about right now. But that's where, like, do you just say, oh well, blow it all up and start new? I don't know, but it's really dependent upon if we can actually turn some of those decent performances into results.
And then on the questionable side of things, and these are just players that we don't know where they're at in their options, but they definitely are in more of a impact role, with the exception of the first two. Amos Shapiro-Thompson, unclear on where he'll stand with his contract negotiations. Same with Mark Ibarra. They're both probably in club options, or at least we'll have to go through a negotiation if the club has them return. Again, I don't see why not, but like those would be the ones where it could come down to salary and dollars. Jackson Lee is another questionable because he's too good to be on this team in a secondary capacity. Who knows what we'll see of him? We've said at length, we may have already seen his last time ever dressing and playing in front of fans. Danny Rivera doesn't seem like he can buy his own minutes, so I just don't see him potentially really returning next season. Isaac Anking, he's a fan favorite, but now with this loan, the only kind of moment we could talk about is the fact that Forward Madison went out and requested him, but maybe he needs to apply his trade somewhere else where he can get those tangible minutes. Anking only had maybe 27 total minutes across 4 games before he was shipped off to the Wisconsin side. Taimu Okiyoshi is another one. I could see Taimu returning because he's a young player. He's probably getting paid peanuts, and if he wants to continue to grow in the league. Will Meyer, does he go the Nate Silvera route and just say, hey, I had my fun, but like now I'm never going to see starts. Like I need to go and move on to something bigger, better, or different. Joe Brito's another questionable one. Does he continue to come in this less than starting capacity now, not always making the
second
18?
Half of the year? We haven't seen a ton of him.
Rio Hope Gunn earned his way onto this squad but it's kind of hit or miss if we see him with the depth we have when it comes to center backs. And then of course Kevin Vang and Cole Dewhurst, though they could return just because they have a role on this team from a training composition standpoint. It's really up to them if they want to continue to move forward and fulfill that obligation or that role. But this is most likely how this will shape out. Again, pretty confident in the 2026 ones, and then the rest is all up to the discretions of Coach Kano and the technical staff. So let's get into the last question of the mailbag, and that's Leo asking, do you think we are having a confidence problem, a movement positioning problem, both, or maybe something completely else?
I'd probably say a little bit of all of them, right? I think you could look at some of the thing is it could be different per player. Are Jojea and Noah Fuson having confidence problems because neither of them are hitting the levels that they hit last year? Then do we have some other issues where, like we've talked at length this year about Maxi Rodriguez and where does he fit into this team, about in terms of movement and positioning, right? He's simultaneously everywhere on the field, but we also sometimes don't know if he's maybe deployed in the right starting position. I think it's a little bit of everything here, and I think you could go player by player, and with the exception of maybe our back line, who has been pretty solid, and like Koke, because his positioning is at midline of the field. So
Tim McDuff writes in, JJ gets a lifetime contract because of his son being named Rhodes. So but he says that's his heart speaking, not his brain. So maybe even Tim would understand if I want JJ to stay. I think JJ just as the vibe check. He passes the vibe check, Yeah.
He's a great dude. I'd love to keep him.
So let's get into this preview of the Jägermeister Cup here for our matchup of Rhode Island FC versus Sacramento Republic. For Rhode Island FC, like just getting people reacquainted with how we got to the semifinals. They advanced thanks to the magic of Dwayne Busy Atkinson scoring in the 74th minute, just a handful of minutes after subbing on in their game against Birmingham Legion. One of the few goals that we've seen in the last few months scored from the run of play, and it doesn't even count in the regular season, which is an even farther and fewer between the stat opportunity. For Sacramento Republic, their path came through a 0-0 away match against Loudoun United that saw Sacramento advance in penalties after backup keeper Jared Mazzola had the performance of his life, coming up with 5 big saves before denying Abdulatif Abukura and Zach Ryan, Loudoun's best offensive pair, from converting their penalty kicks, seeing the only remaining Western Conference team continue their pursuit at their shot at glory. Jason, I've reminded everyone of how this is going to happen. These games were going to happen simultaneously. Hartford will be playing Greenville Triumph. We've got Sacramento Republic. Obviously, this isn't the way we wanted to go. We probably wanted Triumph. We're going to have to go through this difficult side in Sacramento. Remind us exactly how much fun we had with Sacramento the first time we saw them this season.
Oh, yeah, we had a blast. I don't know if you guys remember this, but back in June, they came to town and earned themselves a 2-0 victory over Rhode Island FC at Centerville Bank Stadium. And honestly, it was a pretty comprehensive victory from their side. They really turned the screw on us there. Goals came in the second half from Rodrigo Lopez and Christian Perano. And the win marked the first ever triumph over the defending Eastern Conference champions. And goalkeeper Danny Vidiello notched his 50th career USL championship regular season clean sheet. We went into that match thinking they're not in form. We have a good opportunity. They're historically a good team, but we thought we could probably get this done. And they just wiped the floor with us.
Jason, I'm not going to lie to you. I don't think I've washed my sheets 50 times. And this goalkeeper has 50 clean sheets. I'm dead serious. I'm thinking back to the amount of times I've cleaned my linen in the last 2 years, and it's not 50 times. Does that make me a dirty person? I don't know, but I know it's not 50 times. This man is he's a freak. He's a freak of nature. And again, we may not even see him. We'll talk about that at length here as we break down Sacramento's side, but there's a chance we don't even see Danny on the night. And spoiler, their backup, it's just like the Jackson Lee situation all over, just as scary. But in that time since we last saw each other, Sacramento, remember, they were at one of their worst moments of the season in terms of performance. People were saying, hey, Collins isn't the guy to have. We made another mistake. Where's Mark Briggs at? Can we bring him back? after that victory against us, they went on to an 8-3-2 across all competitions since then. They went from being a team on the wrong side of the playoff line to now a team that is the most favored to win the USL Cup final, or at least advance to the final, amongst FC Tulsa, Sacramento, and then people are saying either El Paso or maybe even the Switchbacks might make a reemergence here. Their only losses have been to a fluke Jägermeister Cup performance against Orange County and a loss against El Paso. In that time, they've only conceded 5 goals. 5 goals across their last 13 matches, Jason, with the 8 of those clean sheets along the way. This team is literally a freak of nature right now. Now, the only thing I would say is, in argument or in defense of that, maybe this isn't a fair assessment of Sacramento, although I don't even like saying this out loud, you could argue that they've been playing a lot of the cellar dwellers amongst the league or USL 1 teams.
Beating up on those dungeon goblins.
Right. And
farming XP.
When you look at the exception of El Paso, which in one game they won and one game they lost, they also played Lexington to a draw, which Lexington went from being at the bottom of the table to now also making a strong run for a conference home berth. They also then played a New Mexico team that's now out of form. New Mexico is spiraling the drain right now. Every one of their opponents in that stretch of 13 games, they've all been in the bottom 4 of the standings, whether the Eastern Conference or the Western Conference, or they've been USL 1 teams. So, like, you could argue that they came into form, they got hot at the right time to beat up on the teams that you're supposed to beat up. But then I look back at Rhode Island FC, like, we're not doing that to these teams for the most part. We're not winning those points where we think, oh, this is a for sure thing. Miami's imploding. They're selling all their players off now. Like, maybe we'll get that second result.
Yeah, we'll get a second chance maybe.
But like, we didn't do what they're doing now to those same teams. So I don't know if it's time to give them flowers or time to give them a suspicious look under the magnifying glass, but it doesn't matter because right now Sacramento is red hot. And I can't wait for you to explain why they are so red hot.
Yeah, and under Coach Neil Collins, they've consistently lined up in a 3-5-2, but you can kind of function that as a 5-3-2 when defending. Our RIFC fans are well aware of. We've done very similar things here. They featured high aggressive back line, 3 central defenders that will step into midfield and compress space. We saw last time when they played against us, they like to press in waves, right? They will, rather than controlling the ball, they'll cede the possession. They'll strategically and press intensely in the midfield and the opponent's half, but they'll also step back and kind of like, let the to not kind of like they're really doing that balance of not like wearing themselves out. Arne Slot kind of does that with Liverpool a lot too, and it works really well for them. Even when the opponent's half of the ball, Sacramento keeps them at arm's length with just 22% of total passes in a match occurring within their own defensive third. So making sure that they are keeping them out of the box there, and really kind of highlights how they're able to like create space up the field for themselves. With a strong central state, many teams tend to like play long crosses under pressure, but Sacramento dominates aerial duels. So it's
Jack
really
Gurr
kind
is
of
a beast on the right side.
He really is. It's really tough to break them down in that regards. They win around 56% overall and up to 68% in critical half segments, leveraging this to regain possession high and quickly to transition.
We saw that in our matchup where we went route 1 and we tried to do the long ball. We tried to implement a cross game, and
they had like very
stuck.
Like distinct direct patterns of play, right? They would win the ball and you could immediately see what they were doing. Players were passing and making runs and they were going right at us.
And it was prescriptive runs. It was like almost like the way you would play Madden, right? You'd watch an NFL game. It was like routes where like, okay, I've passed the ball and I'm running into this channel, and whether the ball comes or not, like that's where I should be anticipating a pass from coming. And it worked. It worked really well. They keep such a good shape that even when things get out of sorts, like they know exactly where they need to run to be back in. It's insane. I don't think there's another team within the USL Championship right now that is as coordinated as an entire team as Sacramento Republic. I don't see it. Like everywhere else, like they shape, they adjust.
I think maybe you could argue Louisville just because of their position, but they're also a little like loosey goosey. But they've just been so strong defensively this year that like that's all been kind of taken care of.
Yeah, and with that, in addition to, you look at like how they look on the offense. We mentioned Jack Gurr, but you also have to give the credit to Rodrigo Lopez. He wasn't even playing; he was injured, and then I think he also had the situation with his son, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, he had to get that the heart surgery, and
Right.
I think because he actually missed the game against us last year, I think.
Right. So he came back in this one and was very damaging to us in what he was able to offer. Now it seems like he's become kind of a mainstay here with Sacramento, maybe to the point that some of the players have alternated. We do have breaking news from William Lamb. He's a very good friend of the pod, but he also covers Sacramento amongst just watching the entirety of the league. And he's saying to us that an on-loan player has been announced, that Seattle Sounders Cody Baker will play and make his debut this Wednesday. So great to know that there's even more reinforcements along the way for Sacramento ahead of this game. Jason, let's break down the injuries and what we can kind of expect from an availability perspective here. Right now for our team, we do have Frank Nodarce, Cole Dewhurst, and Albert Dequa. I don't have him listed on the chart because I didn't find a time frame. It didn't sound like Dequa would be out for more than just the one match, so I don't have him as questionable, but we could expect to not see him here in this midweek. Don't know if it was precautionary or if they needed to take their time with it. Jajea Quazera and Matthew Corcoran still out on international duty. And then I'm gonna ping William here in the chat. We haven't seen Jared Timmer in the last few games. It looked like he's been out. He's recovered from an injury that he had a little bit earlier in the summer, but hasn't quite made the team sheet. I didn't see him traveling for the game against Tampa. I would imagine most of the players that were down there are making the extended trip here to Rhode Island. Didn't see him in the sheet, so I imagine that he's not going to be available. Just either a lingering injury or just a precaution to not have him play. He was a big part of the back three that held us, kind of kept us blank on that match a little earlier this season. So it'll be interesting to see if we have an example of him here on the night. But Jason, let's talk about Rhode Island FC. I mean, like we said at the beginning, I don't think there's much that's going to change here for this team, right? Do we expect the same rotation of player or the same players to start that we saw against Lou?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of, I don't want to say the most important game, but it is the next game and it is of high importance.
It's a must win. You can say it.
Yeah. I mean, it literally is because you get knocked out of the competition. So Koke Vegas, obviously net, in regards to that defense, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Ugo Bacharach, Karifa Yao, Amema Bika, they have been very strong. And, Ugo loves to kind of pretend he's, a six and just run off into other ways in the field. And, Karifa and Ame got him back there. Clay Holstad, Zach Harivo, Marky Barr, Aldair Sanchez again across the middle there, especially when you look at some of those. Like, we're not all of a sudden depleted, but we do have two players outright on international duty. So with Maxi Rodriguez, JJ Williams, and Amos Shapiro Thompson up top. And I imagine, depending upon the health, maybe we'll see Chico. He's done well in this competition, so I wouldn't be surprised. And I think you could also argue to see some busy rotate here for Amos Shapiro Thompson. I think, especially depending on how the game goes, if we find ourselves with some opportunities to really control the ball, I think he could open up play and maybe really create some chances there for Williams. We'll see how that kind of pans out. If it's a very tough, tight game, I wouldn't be surprised to maybe not see him till late.
When you're playing against a team like Sacramento, where they're all about tactics, shape and identity, would you bring a player like Busy in to disrupt that? Or would you go with a more reliable approach of having Amos being able to drop a little bit? I mean, Busy can do it, but let's be honest, we want him moving forward. Amos can kind of go both directions.
I think Busy can give you an outlet. And so that could be good against tired legs. And, no player likes to be pigeonholed into being a substitute in that regards. But if you can bring him on late and have him play direct and run at their back line, it could maybe cause some issues, especially if it's 0-0 running late onto the match.
Yeah, and the fact that JJ did go the full 90, we talked, would Kano manage his minutes in any capacity? didn't happen. So it'll be interesting to see how much more we get out of JJ's legs here, just a few days removed from his last match. Want to ask you, I couldn't help but notice that Karifa Yao gets the pull for Grant Stoneman to come in. I've been watching this closely. The previous week he comes in for Ame Mobika. Mobika can't keep 90 minutes usually because it's just like he seems like he's always the first one to get pulled.
He also was like literally out of contract compared to a lot of the other players. So he's still in that, like, he's been with us a few months now, but like getting into that fitness can take a long time.
Agreed. But now here, you have Bacharak on a yellow, Yao on a yellow as well. Mabika's the only player not on a yellow, and he makes the move to swap Stoneman for Yao. Could Kano be telegraphing that? Because he's gonna have to figure out a way to get Stoneman back. And I think he's very much a pro. Stoneman is my guy back there. At one point, one of those other two defenders is gonna have to go. We've all wanted to see Batrack return to a 6 role, but with the oops all midfielder problem, I don't know how that works itself out either. Do you think Yao could we see the Canadian start to ride Pine here in the near future? Or
it's really interesting because if we go back to the beginning of last year really quickly, I think a lot of fans were kind of skeptical of him. And then quickly he became somewhat of a fan favorite and almost just became a rock. And there are a few things that you could say, like he was like one of the first names on the team sheet, right? You put him there, center of the back three. But at the same time, if we want to be a little critical of him here, the one thing that he does lack is speed. He's very strong. He's a brick wall. People do not get through him. But if you can get past him, I don't know if he can always has the speed to catch up against faster players. So I could see maybe a world where maybe you might want to swap him out. Just at the same time, it feels weird to not have a lineup with him in it.
Have you noticed that Yao's been playing a little bit more directly himself, like taking the ball forward a few extra spaces, whereas historically he's always been the furthest back of the defensive line minus Koke. I've watched him now in the last few games like get a little more comfortable about crossing into the half line and taking a few extra dribbles or touches and see what he can do. Kind of reminiscent of what the impact of Mobika and now Batrack have had on, like, oh, if my defenders can go forward, I better be able to kind of prove my measure.
Yeah, I mean, if they can rotate, especially, they're both tall and like both Bacharach and Mabika they're not the fastest, but they have a stride. They can cover a lot of distance pretty quickly with how tall they are.
Agreed. Let's talk here for a second about this Sacramento side. Again, guaranteed predictions to be wrong on this one as well. Jason, with this team coming off of short rest, heading up from Tampa, do we see Collins rotate this squad at all, or do we see him go for blood with his tried and true starters, considering the implications of this game?
Because of the implications of this game, I think he's going to put out the A squad, right? He substituted Roro at halftime after the opening goal, probably in preparation for this, especially an older player. He's closer to 40 than 30. You want to manage those legs, and he's, a very skilled player. You want him to be available for this game. It'll be mostly the same, but there'll probably be a few changes compared to the last time we squared off against them.
Agreed. I have on here for this match a little bit of some guesswork here, and it's a little off because, it's a Monday and I don't have time to do everything perfect. But I do see, first and foremost, want to talk about the Jared Mazzola part. He was so dynamic in their last Jägermeister Cup match. Do we see him continue to move forward, or does Vitiello finally get that start as they're getting dangerously close to some significant hardware? William Lamb writes in the chat that, he asks, will we see Jackson Lee? I guarantee you we'll see Koke Vegas in the back of that net.
I think, when you made the switch, you can't go back.
You can't go back at this point. In that back three, though, I still think Jared Timmer will not be available. So it looks like one of the alternates, and this is where Collins has been experimenting a little bit, but Rayan Gigi will probably most likely be on that right center back side. Lee Desmond will be in the center, and Freddie Kleeman with Jack Gurr out on the right, Nick Ross and Blake Willie with Michael Benitez on that left wing. And then the front three is going to be the complete rotation here. Russell Cicerone will be here. We saw him in that last match, but it's the newcomer in Corey Bennett that will most likely be the most impactful to this match. He comes from Las Vegas Lights, and he's been one of the credited players on what got the Lights to that first ever playoff appearance and made that historic run. And then Roro Lopez, not Herrera, will definitely be in that starting rotation. We saw Lopez come out at the halftime. They were already up a goal. So as a 38-year-old player, you got to manage the minutes, you got to manage the legs. So most likely going to see that. But what I guess I want to ask then, looking into it, when you look at that, Christian Pirano and Luis Fernandez, both players we saw in that, complete match against us for that first round, they're now weapons off the bench. We now have this other player coming from Seattle. Ryan Spalding is available for selection. This team, depth-wise, I feel like they may have more depth than us. So it kind of is reminiscent of a story we've told a lot, that Rhode Island may need to, for the first time ever, get ahead in this game and really hold down the fort. I just don't know if we go to the benches, if Rhode Island's going to be able to keep their head above water here.
Yeah, when I kind of thinking about how this game is going to pan out with the way, we held down a very hot Louisville team to just one freak goal. I mean, it feels like this game also is going to have 0-0 written on it. Like it's destined for penalties, or it's very much akin to what happened last time where, you get a 79th minute goal from, Busy. And that's the only, assuming that we don't just get spanked 2-0.
So then,
but I think that we are arguably a much stronger defensive team though at this point, and I think we can at least contain them to a certain extent.
It sounds like from the chat, William believes Jared Mazzola will be the cup keeper on Collins' side, and listen, that makes sense. You ride one, the hand that's hot, and two, again, you put faith in those cup keepers to put on the performance and get the results. So I'm going to ask you this question: is the Lou City result an amplification or a hindrance to the overall confidence of this match coming up this week?
I don't think in any way it's a hindrance. Amplification to a certain extent, not like a crazy boost, but you can, you brush yourself off and say, hey, we held our own against the best in the league and lost because of a freak goal. That should give, especially at least your back line, confidence that we can go up against a Sacramento team and we can get our job done. Can we score a goal? That maybe is yet to be seen, but they can at least give them the opportunity to stay in the game, and at least the defense, that is.
Should we expect to see goals in this match from Rhode Island FC?
I used to be a very tight game. I think that if we score a goal, we score one. And I think we're going to have to then rely on the defense there to really, get us past the finish line, if not being destined going to penalties.
So speaking of that, from a tactics perspective, what does Rhode Island FC need to do to win this match?
I think they're going to have to remain really strong defensively. If we are going to continue to possess the ball, we're going to have to probably try and draw them out, be very careful about, seceding possession in dangerous areas. But at the same time, it's almost like do you want to generate almost like counter transition, right? You if anything, pass around the back until you can find an open lane and then just go for it. Right? Don't then move it up and then let's pass around some more. Just go for it. See if you can catch them out.
I think that is how you can unlock Sacramento. Again, they've only allowed 5 goals in the last 13 matches. They've been playing just this lights out style that, they're getting victories and not bringing games into any kind of close comparison. They're not letting the other team get themselves into the game. What I noticed from the press last time, what I saw in the tape I watched getting ahead of this, they're going to have to play out the back. And like you said, they're going to have to play deeper and deeper. We've seen it getting hairier and hairier as Koke has drawn attackers to within 6 inches of the goal. And I think he's going to have to do more of that. And the reason I say that is because when you look at how Sacramento can win that much of the aerial duels, route one and going long won't work. And so when you have a team that has a high tempo press, drawing them in and breaking that first line of 2 or 3 attackers than defenders. It's the only way you're going to get them out of shape. But like you said, once they've broken that first line, the next 2 passes have to be forward. They can't go back and forth and recycle. They're better off at that point just giving Sacramento the ball then, because frankly, Sacramento, they play the same way we want to, where they're collecting the ball in transition and then they're countering, right? Like they can do a lot of other things, but that's something that they're very good at in that midfield collapse and catching the turnovers. Either we have to draw them in and beat that first line, or we have to give them the ball, and then we have to catch them in transition and beat them to it before they get back into shape. So really what that tells me is either we play slow and deliberate with like just pinpoint passing, or we play fast and sloppy and hope that the sloppiness works in our favor.
Hope that our defense is strong enough to balance that out.
I think based on what Connor said at the press conference, I think we're going to see the first, not the latter. I think we're going to see a slow, deliberate buildup, and then I think we're going to be playing this to penalties. I don't think Connor will ever say, and I don't think the team will want to say that they're going to try just to hold out, but I just feel like because we haven't seen Rhode Island break down a defense of this nature or a team that plays at this level, I don't know that we have a goal in us. So I think that the best option right now may be a 0-0 going into PKs, and then Rhode Island has to do the thing that they've never been able to demonstrate and win a match in penalties. Like we're gonna have to see if they can pull that off in front of.
I'd rather take my chances in full time, but
no, I agree with you. I what I want and what I think are going to happen are two different things. I want them to get an early lead and demonstrate what they can do to close out games when they score first, and then hold on for dear life. But the reality is, I think that we haven't shown that we can score goals, and so I think this will go to a scoreless penalty shootout. And when you look at how Sacramento set up against Loudoun, by the way, they had a deep block at times, and Loudoun argued as a much better offensive attack. They still drew that game out to a 0-0. Like they couldn't find a way, because this game has substance, right? Like there's going to be a lack of bravery from either side to take the initiative to score that first goal. No team wants to be eliminated. So if two teams are playing defensively solid, it's going to be a bit of probing back and forth until there's an opportunity. And those might not come, very often inside this match.
Between,
yeah. So I don't know. My feeling is this becomes a bit of a slug, a bit of a just battle of attrition, and then this goes to penalties. I just that or one team opens the floodgates, and there's no closeness in this match. It's got to go either way in my opinion. I don't see it being any other way.
Yeah, pretty much the same thing. Either PKs or like
PKs are bust.
Or like a 1-0 slog kind of.
I respect, by the way, though, that fans do believe 48% of fans will think that Rhode Island FC is going to win this game. 39% of fans believe Sacramento's got it in the tank. 13% believe that this will be a draw going to penalties. So, they understand the dynamics of the match. I want to quickly talk about this game coming up on Wednesday, September 7th, or excuse me, September 10th at 7 p.m.
Time traveler.
Gates will open at 6 p.m. So make sure that you show up for what should be a very interesting look into whether or not we can advance all the way to the final and give what everyone wants in that El Clamico rematch round number 4.
It's a match that never ends.
That being said, make sure, though, before you go into the stadium, you do go to High Motor Grill, where we will be with Tide Talk in the Rising Tide Live. We're going to partner with our good friends over at Tide Talk, the other podcast that covers the club. We're going to have a collaboration event, do a little live show. They're really great at doing live shows. One day we'll figure that out for ourselves. But in the meantime, we're going to hitch our wagon to them, and we're going to talk all things Jägermeister Cup and kind of just answer questions in person that everyone is always looking to find out. In the meantime, though, I can't wait to see everyone on Wednesday. We're going to be there on time, right? We're gonna make that commitment, Jason.
Yeah, I was able to work out some magic, got my schedule changed around. So looking forward to taking hopefully not one last shot at glory. Hopefully we can get one more time this season, but we'll see what Sacramento has to say about that. Hey, always a great time. Make sure y'all to check out our friends over at the Blazing Musket for all of your New England soccer coverage, and that is including RIFC at theblazingmusket.com. You can follow us on Twitter, Threads, TikTok, and Blue Sky at RIFC Podcast. Our Instagram is at Raising Anchor, and you can check out our website, www.raisinganchorpodcast.com. Anchors up, y'all. See you on Wednesday.
Anchors up, and let's go do a shot of glory.